Beneath the vast emerald skies of Taros 5, a neutral planet ravaged by war, Captain Alex Taylor lay motionless. The battle had claimed many, humans and alien Zentari alike. But against all odds, Alex clung to life amidst the wreckage of metal and plasma. Each laboring breath was a prayer he wasn't sure would be answered. Towering above the chaos stood Princess Lysara, the heir to the Zentari throne. Her shimmering silver armor reflected Taros's pale turquoise light as her 9-foot frame moved gracefully through the debris. Leading her troops was instinctual for Lysara, but this battle left a bitter taste. Watching lives, both Zentari and human, be reduced to casualties for the sake of resources churned a deep sense of sorrow in her heart. Her amber eyes caught Alex's broken figure, slumped against a crumbling structure. On instinct, she approached cautiously, her spear lowered. But when she saw the bloodied human staring defiantly at her, something shifted within her. This was not an enemy in this moment. This was someone on the edge of life, clinging to hope. Kneeling, Lysara activated her scanning gauntlet, diagnosing his injuries. Alex winced but stared up at her towering figure, half conscious yet defiant. "Are you here to finish it?" he rasped. She paused, taking in his bravery despite his fragile state. "No." Her voice was deep, resonant, and filled with authority. "I'm here to save you." Before Alex could protest, her strong arms lifted him as though he weighed nothing. She cradled him carefully before disappearing into the Zentari base. That moment marked the beginning of an unthinkable connection, one that neither of them could foresee but would soon threaten to change the fate of their worlds. The Zentari base was a masterpiece of advanced engineering, carved into the cliffs and glowing with bioluminescent orbs that pulsed like breathing organisms. Lysara moved quickly through the winding corridors, her footsteps echoing softly against the metallic floors. Alex struggled to remain conscious, his surroundings blurring into streaks of turquoise and silver. Lysara's soldiers cast curious, wary glances as she carried the human through their stronghold, but none dared question her actions. Her presence commanded silence, and the look in her eyes brooked no opposition. She entered the medical wing, a sprawling chamber filled with an array of Zentari technology that hummed faintly with energy. Carefully, she placed Alex on an exam table, her gauntlet already interfacing with the diagnostic systems. The holographic display sprang to life, scanning his injuries with precision. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and a rapidly dropping pulse. His condition was dire. "Hold still," Lysara murmured, her voice softer now but no less firm. She reached for a vial containing a shimmering, opalescent liquid, a Zentari regenerative serum capable of healing wounds that would otherwise be fatal. Injection into a human was untested, risky even, but she knew there was no other choice. Alex groaned, his eyes fluttering open just enough to see her hesitation. What are you doing?" he croaked. "Saving us both," she replied, and with that, she administered the serum. The liquid coursed through his veins, and Alex arched his back in pain so intense it felt like fire and lightning colliding inside him. Lysara remained by his side, her gaze unwavering, silently willing him to survive. Minutes passed like hours, the room heavy with tension. But then Alex's breathing steadied, the pallor of his skin fading as warmth returned to his body. The serum was working. Relief flickered across Lysara's face, but it was quickly replaced by determination. "You'll live," she said firmly, as Alex's eyes finally met hers again. "But this is only the beginning. Your world is far from safe, and neither is mine." For weeks, Alex's life became a blur of alien technology and recovery. Lysara visited often, but not out of obligation. Something about his resilience intrigued her. She found herself lingering in their conversations longer than she should, learning about humanity's culture, values, and struggles. He, in turn, was captivated by her strength and the gentle compassion beneath her hardened exterior. Their discussions became bridges, threads that wove understanding into the fabric of their divided worlds. When Lysara explained the Zentari customs of bonding and how honor was the core of her people's belief system, Alex shared humanity's love for exploration and innovation, despite flaws. "What are we fighting for?" Alex asked one day, his voice raw with emotion. "Look at us. We're not so different." Lysra looked at him, a conflicted expression crossing her regal face. Duty blinds us all, Captain. That was the first time she referred to him as Captain rather than human. Subtle, but significant. Alex's strength returned faster than anyone anticipated, but with it came a restlessness that even Lysera couldn't ignore. His mind was buzzing with questions. Questions about the Zentari, about his crew, about the bigger threat looming over both their worlds. One afternoon, as the soft hum of alien machinery filled the room, Alex finally voiced the gnawing thought that had plagued him since his awakening. "We can't keep hiding here," he said, his tone resolute. "If what you've told me is true, we're running out of time. I need to get back to my ship." Lysera stiffened. "Your ship is in pieces, Captain. The Zentari Council has already deemed it a threat. Returning to it is suicide. And doing nothing is certain death for all of us," he countered, his hazel eyes locked onto hers, fierce and unyielding. "You didn't save me just to keep me in this cage, did you?" His words hit a nerve, and for a moment Lysera looked as though she might argue. But then she sighed, the weight of her own doubts pressing heavily on her shoulders. "Your stubbornness is going to get us both killed," she said, though there was no malice in her voice. Instead, there was something else, something almost like admiration. With a nod, she stepped closer and lowered her voice. "If we're going to do this, we'll need allies, ones who can think beyond their fear. I'll help you, but you must promise me one thing, Captain." "Anything," Alex said without hesitation. Her violet eyes pierced into his. "Promise me you'll fight not just for your people, but for mine as well. This isn't just about survival. It's about changing everything." For a split second, Alex felt the enormity of her words settle in the air between them. He extended his hand, the universal gesture of trust. Without hesitation, Lysera took it, a small spark of hope igniting in the vast darkness surrounding them. The first step had been taken. Lysera's act of rescuing a human soldier did not go unnoticed. Her Zentari generals grew restless, murmurs of betrayal and weakness spreading through the ranks. Meanwhile, Alex faced his own battles. Even after he healed, he was branded with suspicion and mistrust when the human faction discovered where he'd been kept. The odds were stacked against them. Every meeting they had felt stolen, whispered words and fleeting glances that defied the war raging outside. But the bond was undeniable. Their conversations turned to shared visions of peace. "Together we can show them there's another way," Lysera said one night, her voice steady but soft. Alex smiled faintly. "And here I thought all aliens were heartless warriors." That earned him a rare laugh from her, resonant, genuine, and filled with warmth. Their tentative alliance didn't mean the path forward would be smooth. Skepticism ran deep from both sides, and as weeks went by, the cracks in their truce began to show. Tensions flared the night Alex was summoned to the Zentari Council chambers, a cavernous room illuminated by a mesmerizing glow from crystalline structures embedded in the walls. The generals eyed him with open disdain as Lysera presented their plan. A daring mission to infiltrate one of the human military's fortresses, not to destroy it, but to broker a meeting with key leaders who might also crave an end to the bloodshed. "This is madness," one general hissed, his spiked armor glinting under the crystalline light. "You would risk everything on the word of a human? A soldier, no less." Alex, feeling the weight of their stares, stepped forward. "I'm not asking for your trust," he said evenly, his voice cutting through the charged air like a blade. "I'm asking for a chance to prove that this cycle of hatred doesn't have to define us all." Lysera watched him closely and then addressed her people, her tone sharp and commanding. "Do you think I've made this decision lightly? If there's a sliver of hope that we can end this war without erasing entire civilizations, shouldn't that be worth the risk?" There was a moment of tense silence before another Zentari, slightly younger and less imposing, muttered reluctantly, "You've never led us astray before, Commandant." The dissent loosened, though the air was still heavy with doubt. After the meeting, as they retreated to the quiet of an observation deck overlooking the war-torn planet, Alex spoke. "You didn't have to do that. Undermining your authority like this could cause more trouble than it's worth." Lysera shrugged, her gaze fixed on the pulsing glow of distant fires below. Risk is part of leadership. Besides, I've survived worse. Alex chuckled softly. You're full of surprises, aren't you? Her lips curved into a faint smirk. You haven't seen anything yet, Captain. They stood in silence for a while after that, two unlikely allies staring into the uncertain expanse of a future they were daring to shape together. Word of their secret alliance spread faster than they anticipated. Both human and Zentari factions moved to suppress what they viewed as treason. Alex and Lysara found themselves hunted from both sides. What had started as a glimmer of hope now felt like madness at times. But they found strength in each other. Facing Zentari assassins and human interrogators alike, they refused to yield. Lysara's deep-seated belief in honor found new meaning as Alex's determination to protect their fragile connection fueled her resolve. They fought side by side, sometimes against their own people, always protecting each other. These moments, filled with the thrill of survival, also revealed tender vulnerabilities. One night, under the brilliant twin moons of Taros 5, Alex took her hand, dwarfed by her larger form yet steadfast in his affection. Lysara, he began hesitantly, I don't think I've felt anything like this before. Not with anyone. Her glowing amber eyes softened, and for the first time, the iron-clad princess faltered. Nor have I, she whispered, her voice like the wind across a quiet sea. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the weight of their confessions hanging in the air like a fragile thread connecting them. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged with something neither could quite name, but both understood instinctively. The distant sound of engines snapped them back to the present. Lysara's head tilted sharply, her senses heightened, and Alex felt the shift in her demeanor. They've found us, she said, her voice low but certain. Alex tightened his grip on her hand, a brief reassurance before releasing it. Then we make our stand here, he said, his tone steady despite the odds. Lysara's smirk returned, though there was something softer in it now. Always the bold one, aren't you, Captain? He grinned despite the tension. You haven't seen anything yet. They moved together, an unspoken understanding guiding their steps. The old ruins around them, remnants of an ancient civilization, became their battlefield. Alex quickly set up traps with the remnants of discarded technology, while Lysara readied her blade, its crystalline edge gleaming ominously in the moonlight. When their pursuers arrived, Zentari hunters, with their insect-like armor and a contingent of human soldiers, the fight erupted like a storm. Lysara was a blur of motion, her strikes precise and devastating, her movements more like dance than combat. Alex, on the other hand, used guile and ingenuity, leading their enemies into traps and exploiting weaknesses. They were outnumbered, overwhelmed, but their synergy was undeniable. For every blow Alex delivered, Lysara was there to defend, and for every adversary she struck down, Alex ensured their flank was protected. But even as they held their own, the tide of enemies seemed endless. Alex's breathing grew labored, and Lysara's strikes, though no less fierce, began to falter under the weight of sheer numbers. Still, neither showed signs of surrender. Then above the din of the battle, a screeching roar cut through the night. The sound was otherworldly, primal, and everything froze. From the shadows beyond the ruins, something enormous stirred, a guardian of sorts, one of the planet's ancient protectors, awakened by the chaos. Its glowing eyes fixed on both friend and foe alike, and Alex felt a chill run down his spine. Lysara, he muttered, stepping closer to her as the massive creature emerged, its towering form illuminated by the twin moons. I see it, she replied, her voice edged with both awe and apprehension. The battlefield went quiet, as if the very planet had held its breath. This was no longer a fight between factions. They would all have to face the wrath of something far greater. Despite the odds, Lysara and Alex's alliance began to swell into a movement. Their courage inspired a small but growing group of both humans and Zentari, willing to envision a future beyond war. The two races, once locked in hatred, began to see glimpses of each other's humanity, or lack thereof, in new light. Alex and Lysara's love became a symbol, not of weakness, but of strength forged through understanding. At a key turning point, Lysara stood before a Zentari council, Alex silent by her side. Peace is not surrender. It's the greatest act of courage, she declared, her voice commanding yet filled with heartfelt conviction. Her words rippled through the council in stunned silence. For a moment it seemed as though her words had fallen into an abyss, swallowed by years of bitterness and division. Then from the far side of the room, an elder Zentari with battle scars etched across his crimson skin slowly rose to his feet. His deep, resonant voice broke the silence. "You speak of courage, human," he began, his golden eyes narrowing as they fell upon Lysara. "But how do we trust words when they have so often been lies wrapped in promises of peace?" Alex, unable to remain silent any longer, stepped forward. "I understand your doubt. I would feel the same if I stood in your place. But look at where our hatred has brought us. Endless war, crumbled homes, families torn apart. We're not asking you to abandon your strength or pride. We're asking you to stand with us, to find strength in unity instead of destruction." A murmur spread through the council, some nodding cautiously, others glaring in defiance. Lysara laid a hand on Alex's arm, grounding him, before turning her gaze back to the elder. "Trust cannot be built in words alone, you are right, but it can begin in actions. Allow us to take the first step. Give us a chance to prove that peace is not just a dream whispered by the desperate, but a reality waiting to be shaped by the brave." The room fell silent again, tension crackling like an unspoken storm ready to break. All eyes were on the elder Zentari as he studied them both, his expression unreadable. Then after what felt like an eternity, he gave a slow, reluctant nod. "You ask for a chance, and so you shall have it," he said. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, carrying an unspoken warning. "But do not squander it. The trust of the Zentari is not so easily earned." Relief flooded through Lysara and Alex, but they knew this was only the first step. The path ahead would be fraught with peril, betrayal, and moments of doubt. Even so, the spark of hope had been ignited, and for the first time in years it felt as though the tides of an endless war might finally shift. The peace treaty between humans and Zentari was signed under the same emerald skies that once bore witness to war. Though the scars of battle remained, so did the promise of a brighter future, thanks to the efforts of an alien princess and a human soldier. Underneath the twin moons, Alex and Lysara found a quiet moment together amidst celebration. For her, ruling the Zentari was no longer an obligation, but an opportunity to lead with compassion. For Alex, life no longer felt like a series of wars and losses, but a shared mission with someone who understood him deeply. Their hands intertwined, facing a sky filled with stars. Together, they found love where it was least expected and forged hope in its wake. Their story was just the beginning of a bridge spanning galaxies, reminding all who heard it that even in the darkest times, courage and connection can rewrite destiny.